Ah, what a wonderful time to be alive. We have tractors, air conditioning, crayons, planes, cars, instant coffee. And I'm sitting here enjoying my sandwich. Confused? Let me explain. Context time. So here's the situation. This man's name is Gavrilo Princip. He's a Bosnian Serbian student who believes that Bosnia should be freed from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So he joins a secret society called the Black Hand, which has ties to Serbia, and they were like, "Y'all ready for this?" It just so happened that the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was driving through the city in an open-top car with his entire schedule published out on the news for everyone to see. The Black Hand decides to assassinate the Archduke.
Oh, I have a bad feeling about this.
The assassins tried throwing a bomb at his car, but because of Newton's fifth law of plot armor, bounced off and hit another car, and the Archduke got scared and hit the dash. But then he became Mr. Beast and decided to visit the victims of the bomb, despite nearly being killed. So on the way to the hospital, they make a wrong turn, and the car stalls just a few feet from Gavrilo Princip, who just so happened to be eating a sandwich at a food stall. Obviously, the Austro-Hungarian Empire was reasonably pissed about losing the heir to the throne, and they had a good read that Serbia was the cause of this, so they wrote a big list of impossible demands to Serbia, basically telling them that they would personally investigate Serbia, and that Serbia had to remove all anti-Austro-Hungarian Empire propaganda, as well as let the Austro-Hungarian Empire operate their military in there, listen to Red Dress by Sarah Brand for 24 hours, kiss a Discord mod, and touch grass among a few other demands, and if they didn't comply, it would mean war. I made the last three up, but I think you got the idea. But was Serbia gonna let that slide? Yes.
What?
I mean, no, they're not gonna let that slide. You see, by declaring war on Serbia, they accidentally
triggered my trap card!
Russia. And Russia was friends with France, who was maybe also possibly slightly friends with the UK. Essentially, it was the Austro-Hungarian Empire going like,
"You can't defeat me."
No, I know. But he can.
Because this was a problem, Austria-Hungary called their friends, the Germans, for some emotional support, and maybe also some military support. And then the UK was like,
"This shit, I'm out."
And then it became Serbia, France, and Russia versus Austria-Hungary and Germany, and suddenly it became winnable for Austria-Hungary. So Serbia rejects the demands, and Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Then Russia declares war on Austria-Hungary and Germany. Then Germany declared war on Russia and France. Then France declared war on Germany and Austria-Hungary. Okay, let's rewind a second. You see, Germany had a plan called the Schlieffen Plan. They knew that Russia would be slow to mobilize due to its size, so it would organize a surprise attack on France first using all of their military might, take out France, then quickly turn around to take out Russia. The Germans had so much confidence in their plan that they claimed the war would be over before the leaves fell. However, there was a problem attacking France. France had too many powerful fortresses at the border, so they had to get in through another way. Belgium. Since Belgium was a neutral country, the Germans thought it would be a relatively easy fight, but the Belgians said,
Are you sure about that?
and slowed down the Germans greatly. This also pissed off Britain, who wasn't so happy that Germans were attacking Belgium, so they came out of hiding and declared war on Belgium. Wait, no, Germany. They declared war on Germany.
Meanwhile,
Austria-Hungary versus Serbia, round 1. Austria-Hungary decides to attack Serbia in the mountains, but they make the crucial blunder because Serbia has the high ground.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground! You underestimate my power!
Austria-Hungary gets absolutely destroyed and retreats. Knock knock. Who's there? It's Russia, and they're a lot faster than everyone anticipated. Austria-Hungary was like, relax guys, I got this. No. Germany then has to send troops to help Austria-Hungary, and they do a relatively good job in the north, taking out much of the Russian Second Army due to them intercepting unencrypted Russian messages. Don't you hate it when all your army intel is leaked because your unencrypted messages are being sent on unsecure lines? Well, thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Meanwhile, Germany continued to advance forward into France, and eventually neared the capital, Paris. The French commander-in-chief needed to make a play to stabilize the situation, so he made a brilliant move by making a last stand at Paris, and in the resulting closing battle, a gap opened up in the flank. This was bad news for Germany, and they had to hit the dash. The Allies then began to launch counterattacks, and Germany did something that would set the tone for the rest of the war. They dug a hole and hopped into the hole. Enter trench warfare. The Allies, seeing this, were like, hey, plagiarism is cool, and proceeded to also dig holes. Now both of them are stuck in their holes. The trenches grew longer and longer, and soon enough, it became a game of Slither.io. When they reached the sea, they had trenches stretching from the coast to the border of Switzerland. They were in a deadlock. Months of fighting and deaths of thousands would sometimes only amount to a few meters of land. The land between the two trench systems was dangerous. It was a mess of man-eating mud, barbed wire, and dead bodies. This was called no man's land. The Belgians decided to make a stand at Ypres? Hold on.
Ypres from French Ypres.
Anyways, it was a bloodbath. Troops from Canada, India, and Senegal arrived, but in the end it was an indecisive victory, as both sides decided to settle for the winter. The British forces were almost completely wiped. They were going to rely on raw recruits from now on. Serbia versus Austria-Hungary, round 2. This time Austria-Hungary was like, winter? What's winter? And normally people wouldn't attack during the winter, but the Austro-Hungarian Empire was feeling quirky and decided to invade Serbia during the winter. After they captured the capital, Austria-Hungary was feeling really good about themselves until Serbia was like,
Hello there.
and deleted the Austro-Hungarian Empire, albeit suffering heavy losses. It's Christmas. Both sides came out of their trenches to exchange gifts, laugh, sing, and even kick a ball around. For one day, it was all Bing chilling. Once both sides were completely locked in trench warfare, the new objective was to play for time. The British, with their big, sexy navy, established a naval blockade, stopping Germans from getting their supplies. The Allies also had several places where they can draw fresh troops from. The Germans and the Austro-Hungarians also gained a new ally, the Ottoman Empire. We'll get to them later. In the meantime, both parties engaged in some side quests. The Allies took over the German colonies in Africa, the Australians took out German New Guinea, and Japan took over a bunch of small Pacific islands. Italy was originally helping out the Germans, but after some disagreement decided to switch sides. I'm sure they won't be doing that again.
That one didn't age quite so well.
Italy then tried to attack the Austro-Hungarians northeast of Italy, but then they just got stuck and ended up in a stalemate. They had just finished the Balkan War and were heavily divided on whether or not they wanted to join the war, so the We Want War people did a little
Trolling, it's called we do a little trolling.
and shot some shells at Russia and basically forced the Ottoman Empire to fight. They then tried to attack Russia, but they made a critical blunder. You see, invading Russia activated their the winter, and the Ottomans became Bing chilling and died. They then tried to attack the British at the Suez Canal, but that failed horribly as well. Then the Allies tried to attack Gallipoli, but they ended up back in trenches, which they were not happy about, so they went,
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
The Ottoman Empire needed someone to blame, so they blamed the Armenians for their failures. This caused a mass genocide, which resulted in the death of over 1.5 million ethnic Armenians. Then the Germans tried to pull a sneak 100 and sent some German soldiers to Afghanistan to try to get them to fight British India, but then they got drunk in a country where alcohol is outlawed. The war had come to a standstill. The battles in the other frontiers were leading to nothing. Something needed to change. So then this happened. You see, for some reason, there are rules when it comes to war, and two of them said, don't use chemical weapons and don't kill civilians. Okay, now Germany, repeat what we just said. Zeppelins, which were large balloon ships, dropped bombs on the British civilians. Germans started using chlorine gas, and chlorine gas is this yellow gas that smells like pineapples and pepper, and if you breathe it in, your lungs will fill up with liquid and you'll die. The British were like, hey, plagiarism is cool, and proceeded to release chlorine gas as well, but they didn't check the weather report, and the wind blew the chlorine gas back at them. Also, undersea boot.
What?
Undersea boot, or more commonly referred to as the U-boat, is a submarine made by the Germans which sunk over 5,000 ships during the entirety of the war, many of them civilian ships. One such ship was the Lusitania, which contained a bunch of US passengers.
That's a surprise tool that can help us later.
However, the civilian ship had been hiding munitions and arms, so it was a legitimate target. Serbia versus everyone. This time, Germany and Bulgaria decided to tag along with the Austro-Hungarian Empire in taking down Serbia. Serbia, down numbers, fought bravely. However, they were eventually pushed into Albania. But after a friendly invasion of Albania from Austria-Hungary, the Serbians escaped by sea. The year is 1916. Well, what happened in 1916? Well, the first and only major naval battle happened. Both sides had invested in some new powerful ships called dreadnoughts, but they were really expensive, so nobody really wanted to use them, and they were collecting dust in the ports until they saw each other one day and were like, hey, we should probably fight before taxpayers start asking questions that scientists still can't answer. It had a pretty big battle and damaged a bunch of ships, which was not stonks. Both sides declared victory and decided not to fight another major naval battle for the rest of the war. Remember how I said that the British forces were going to rely on raw recruits? Well, the British had conscripted 1.5 million soldiers, which was good because they would need all 1.5 million for what was about to happen next. The Baguette people were being pressured at Verdun, and they needed help desperately. The Germans had upped their technology and invented the tube that shoots hot stuff, which they called the flamethrower, as well as sent in the first batch of stormtroopers. They were the elite soldiers, the exterminator of the Frenches, the cleaner of the benches, the wielder of the wrenches. They wiped out entire trenches, and most importantly, they were accurate. Britain needed a way to relieve pressure from France, so they decided to fight the Germans in the north, at the Somme. No, not that Somme, this Somme. Here, the first tank ever was used. Before tanks, the only way to take out a trench was an artillery rush, chemical warfare, or intense shelling. The tanks changed that. Able to withstand heavy, deadly machine gun fire and barbed wire, it would roll over the trenches, mowing down anything in its path. However, because the British were so eager to show off the tanks, many of them broke down without even reaching the battlefield. Seeing France was in a pickle, the Russians started a huge offensive push with their new ally Romania, and did really well until supplies ran out and they got pummeled. However, once again, the war went into a stalemate. It was 1917, and all the generals and officers had promised the men they would return before the leaves fell. They had fallen for the third time, yet had shown no signs of returning. Just like my dad. Dad? Things were looking bleak. Until Tsar Nicholas and the Russian royal family got really close to a crazy sexy hobo wizard with mystical healing powers and a very hot beard. People, unhappy that some random homeless guy was supposedly calling the shots, rioted, taking out the Tsar. Then a man with a smaller, but yet still very sexy beard, said he could fix everything, overthrowing the newly established government and pulling out of the war. Russia was gone, and that meant the Germans only had to focus on the Western Front. It was a winning endgame. There was no way Germany could blunder the winning position. They then proceeded to shoot down a British cruise liner carrying 123 American passengers. America had been big chilling the entire war with a massively stonks economy, and getting the US involved in the war would pretty much be made in 3. So what did Germany do? They sent a telegraph to Mexico, basically saying, yo, que pasa mi amigos? Hey look, if you beat the United States, I'll dab you up with some money and weapons. I'll even let you take Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and possibly Kansas. The British intercepted it and showed it to the Americans, and so they declared war on Germany. Meanwhile, Germany needed to make a play, or else they were royally cooked. So they threw all their resources into one final push in an attempt to get Britain and France to surrender. But the Allies were getting good at defending the German attacks, and soon enough, Germany was done. Hey, where did everyone go? On November 9, 1918, the Kaiser hit the dash and the Germans started making peace negotiations. The aftermath was devastating. 15 million soldiers came home injured, blind, maimed, or shell-shocked. 9 million soldiers never came home. None of the countries wanted a sequel, so they set out to achieve international peace with the League of Nations, which is like the modern-day UN. And life was good. Until a certain short Austrian man with a funny mustache and a rejected art school application came.